Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to continue to talk about Taylor Swift's and Post Malone's Fortnight video. This content is part of a playlist. You simply will not have context to understand what I'm talking about if you don't watch it in the playlist. Link for the playlist is below. Link for the video is below. Let's go. All right. If you're caught up, let's go. Otherwise, you got to start at the beginning of the playlist. Sorry. Okay. So what we're going to talk about today is Taylor Swift and Post Malone Fortnite video contains three things. It contains information. It contains coded data to say this video is about Dungeons and Dragons. There's tons of it. I've already discussed it at length. And then it contains messages. One of those messages is to Dragon Masters, and I've already discussed the primary coded message to Dragon Masters. There is a second coded message to Dragon Masters, and here is the coded message. It is, you must progress from being and here's the message to Dragon Masters. You must put on the Dungeon Master crown, all right? Now, I will say, I think this is to elite Dragon Masters. This is not all Dragon Masters are destined to be, not all Dragon Masters are, hashtag not all Dragon Masters. Not all Dragon Masters are destined to be Dungeon Masters. Only the elite Dragon Masters should ever put on the crown of Dungeon Master. And putting on and Dragon Masters are Dragon Masters. They're important. Okay, that is real. They are genuinely important. But I want to make it very clear though that Dungeon Masters wear a crown, right? And when you say I'm going to be Dungeon Master, you put the crown on the minute you announce it, right? And you take on a level of authority, right? You're like, hey, I'm going to control every entity, in everything that's not a player character, everything that's not a Dragon Master character will be a Dungeon Master character. Other people would call them NPCs. I don't use that term. I try not to use that term anymore. Dungeon Master characters, right? There are Dungeon Master characters. They'll control the weather. They'll control the deities. They control everything. It's huge, right? And so the moment you say, I'm going to be a Dungeon Master, you put on a crown. So let's talk about the crown in the video. So the video progresses through. First, Taylor Swift is in an asylum, right? Then she's in a room with some scientists, and she's strapped to a rack, right? But she has put on the crown. She has the crown on, okay? And this is very important to understand this, that she is putting on the Dungeon Master crown. And it's heavy, and it's pointed, and it's uncomfortable. It's very clear that Taylor Swift is uncomfortable moving from the Dragon Master slot to the Dungeon Master slot. The moment you see Taylor Swift with this ring of metal around her head with diodes but also regal points, right? Regal points, right? You realize, okay, I see where we're going with this, right? I see these things, right? And once you get into that, once you reach that point, it is actually saying, hey, we're here, right? We are actually at a point where we are putting on the crown, and Taylor Swift puts on the Dungeon Master crown. She moves from being a Dragon Master after she's seen herself in the 300 character sheets that she's built, after she did exactly what Gary said was the thing that would move us to, after she's done the thing that moves us into this space where we are the Dungeon Master. She sees herself. She sees herself through her character sheets, which is exactly what Gary pointed us to. This was what Gary meant all along. Like, he wanted us to see ourselves, right, in the character sheets that we made, right? And so it's important. It's very important what's actually happening at that point. But here's the important part. Okay, so she puts the crown on, and then Josh Charles, the actor who was with Robin Williams in that Carpe Diem movie, and then also And then Ethan Hawke, who is the father of Maya Hawke, who's in the #1 Dungeons and Dragons show in the world, right? They come in, and Josh Charles pushes the button, and Ethan Hawke throws the switch. Josh Charles pushes the button, and Ethan Hawke throws the switch. Okay, now what? Now who do they represent? They represent Dave Arneson. Oh my gosh, Scott, did you just say Dave Arneson? I did. Yeah, I never talk about Dave Arneson, but you know, Taylor Swift is relatively new to Dungeons and Dragons, and she probably believes what a lot of people believe, that Dave Arneson had a significant input into the creation of Dungeons and Dragons. I don't believe that for 1 second, but I'm very certain that that Taylor Swift does think Dave Arneson was a critical creator in creating Dungeons and Dragons, right? And then Ethan Hawke represents Gary Gygax. So Josh Charles turns on the power, and then representing Dave Arneson, and that's a good representation of what Dave Arneson did. Push a button, right? And then Gary threw the switch. He supplied all the energy and everything that would actually turn the juice on, right? And he was really powerful. Like Gary, Dungeons and Dragons, nothing happens with Dave Arneson. He was just an idea guy. Anything happens with Gary Gygax. He was a mover and a shaker. He made worlds, he broke worlds, he shaped worlds. He was a world maker, a world breaker. He was thunder and lightning, right? And and Dave Arneson was never even a whimper. That's the best way to understand him, right? Okay. All right. So all this is happening, right? And then and so once Josh Charles, representing Dave Arneson, pushes the button and Gary Gygax throws the switch, the crown lights up, right? And Taylor Swift is in incredible pain as all this energy comes into her. And what does that represent? Well, once you become a dungeon master, your world fundamentally changes forever. There's nothing that can contain what it's so powerful and so transformative that there's nothing that really can contain what's happening once you get into this space of being a dungeon master. And literally the entire world becomes your purview. You have to learn history, you have to learn military tactics, you have to learn botany, you have to learn how the human heart, the human mind, and the human soul work, right? And the whole world, and you're just, all this information is coming in, and you can't let any of it go. And it's the crown, right? She's wearing the crown, and every piece of information about the world immediately is being pulled into her by herself, and you know, as powered by Arneson and Gygax, in my humble opinion. In my humble opinion, that's the second message. Elite Dragon Masters must put on the Dungeon Master crown. It's going to be incredibly uncomfortable the minute it goes on your head, and then it's going to be incredibly painful once the information starts going into your brain. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider like, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.